My name is Monica James, and this is the part of my life I never planned to speak out loud, but if I don't share it now, I know I'll regret it for the rest of my days. Because what I saw, it wasn't just about me, it was about all of us, about what's coming next. It happened on an ordinary Thursday afternoon, July 11th, 2018. Nothing about that day gave me any warning. I remember standing at my kitchen counter, chopping vegetables for dinner. The window was open. I could feel the warm air against my face, hear the faint sounds of children playing down the street. For a moment, everything felt normal, peaceful, even, and then it hit me. A sharp, crushing pain in the center of my chest, like someone had driven a spike right through my rib cage. I dropped the knife. My hands went numb, my vision blurred around the edges like ink spilling across a photograph. I tried to breathe, but it felt like I was inhaling through water. The room started spinning. I remember gripping the counter, my knuckles white, trying to stay upright. But my knees buckled, and the floor came rushing toward me faster than I could process. And then, silence. No pain, no fear, just stillness. I opened my eyes, or at least, I thought I did, but I wasn't staring at the ceiling anymore. I was looking down at myself. My own body lay motionless on the kitchen floor. My lips slightly parted. My eyes half open but empty. I saw my phone vibrating uselessly on the counter. I saw the vegetables I had been cutting scattered across the floor, forgotten, and I realized I was no longer inside that body. I wasn't breathing, but I wasn't dead either. At least, not in the way I thought death would feel. There was no panic, no struggle, just an overwhelming sense of curiosity, like I was standing at the edge of a secret I'd never been meant to see. And what I saw next, that's why I'm telling you this story. Because it wasn't just about my life ending, it was about what's coming next for all of us. The seconds after I left my body felt like hours. I floated there, weightless, detached, watching the scene unfold below me, as if I were stuck behind invisible glass. My neighbor must have heard me fall because within minutes, she was pounding on the door shouting my name. I saw her face pressed against the window, wide-eyed, panicked. She called 911. I watched her hands shake as she dialed. Time bent in strange ways. I could hear every sound, the distant sirens growing louder, the crackle of the emergency dispatcher's voice through her phone, but it all seemed far away, like echoes inside a tunnel. When the paramedics arrived, they forced the door open and rushed to my side. I stood just a few feet away, but no one could see me, no one could hear me. I tried to speak, tried to scream, tried to tell them, I'm right here. I can see you, I can hear you, but no sound came out. My mouth wasn't working, because I no longer had one. One of the EMTs pressed his fingers against my neck, searching for a pulse. Another started chest compressions, counting under his breath, sweat dripping down his forehead. I watched them work on me, shocking my chest, pumping oxygen into my lungs. And yet, I felt no fear, no sadness, just observation. As if I were studying life from the outside for the first time. Then, without warning, I sensed a shift in the room. A presence, warmth enveloped me. Not physical warmth, but something deeper, something ancient. A light without color or form. It wrapped around me like invisible arms. I turned toward it though. I had no body to turn. And that's when I saw them, a being of light, radiant but soft, standing beside me, not male, not female, just pure presence, a guide. They didn't speak, not out loud, but I heard the words clearly, inside my mind. You've been allowed to see something few ever witness. Before I could ask what they meant, I felt myself being pulled gently away, away from the kitchen, away from the paramedics, away from the life I had just left. I wasn't falling, I wasn't flying, I was crossing over, and where I was going next, I never could have imagined. The moment I left the earthly scene, the world around me dissolved. The walls, the paramedics, the ambulance sirens, everything faded like mist blown away by a silent wind. What replaced it wasn't what I expected. There were no golden gates, no harps, no endless fields of clouds. Instead, I arrived in what I can only describe as an angelic command center, a place so vast and intricate that human language can barely touch it. Above me stretched a sky that wasn't a sky. It was alive, shimmering with strands of light that pulsed and flickered like veins of the universe itself. Each beam seemed to carry information, messages, prayers, or maybe decisions. Beneath that radiant canopy, thousands, maybe millions of angelic beings moved with solemn purpose. Some walked, some glided, none wasted a moment. They weren't random spirits floating aimlessly. These beings were working, organizing, studying, guiding. Before them floated massive scrolls of time, unrolling in midair. I watched as scenes from Earth appeared on these scrolls, moving images, not unlike holograms but far more real. I saw wars erupting, storms forming, children being born, old souls leaving their bodies quietly in sleep, acts of cruelty, acts of love. It was all there, unfolding at once. Some angels stood before living blueprints, maps of the earth that shifted and changed as humanity made its choices. These weren't ordinary maps. They displayed glowing grids of energy, lines of fate, and fragile points where free will balanced dangerously on the edge of consequence. One group of angels pointed to certain areas, marking disasters that hadn't happened yet, moments of coming tragedy. Another group whispered prayers, sending waves of light toward places darkened by human greed or hatred. And then there were the angels who wept. I watched as one knelt beside a scroll, silent tears falling onto parchment that shimmered beneath them. Each tear sent ripples through the scroll, changing outcomes, softening edges, creating possibilities for mercy where there was once only pain. It wasn't chaos, it was order, perfect, heartbreaking order. Here, in this place beyond time, I understood something I never grasped before. The universe is not random. Life is not random. There is design in everything. But that design is fragile, delicate like spider silk, woven moment by human choices and angelic guidance. And then, just when I thought I couldn't possibly absorb more, the guide beside me turned to me. Without speaking, they gestured toward one of the massive scrolls unraveling in front of us. I felt a weight settle in my chest, because I already knew what I was about to see wasn't just about the past, it was about the future, and it was going to change everything. The scroll stretched wider, its luminous fabric rippling like a living ocean. Images sharpened into focus, and I saw it, the next disaster. At first, it looked like a map, the outline of continents, glowing softly under a pulse of ethereal light. But then the images moved, and I realized I was no longer looking at symbols. I was watching the future unfold. A massive earthquake ruptured beneath the ocean's floor, an unseen monster waking from a long sleep. I saw walls of water rise, higher than skyscrapers, coastal cities swallowed in minutes, families clinging to rooftops, mothers searching for missing children, fathers falling to their knees in despair. And just when I thought it couldn't get worse, I saw something else. The disaster didn't stop with water. It spread like a chain reaction. Economic systems crumbled. Power grids collapsed. Nations turned against each other, blaming and threatening. Fear became currency. People hoarded resources. Some prayed, others looted. Humanity fractured along lines of survival and selfishness. But the most painful part wasn't the destruction. It was the spiritual fallout. I saw souls ascending, yes, glowing figures rising into the light, their faces peaceful even as their bodies were washed away. But I also saw others falling into despair. Not just physical death, but spiritual collapse. People cursing God, abandoning hope, giving in to hatred. The disaster wasn't just an earthquake. It was a test, a reckoning, a global mirror reflecting who we really are when everything is stripped away. I turned to the angel beside me, my thoughts trembling. "Are you doing this?" I asked, though I didn't speak aloud. The answer came before the thought even finished. "No," the being replied. "We don't cause the disasters, we prepare for them. We guide souls through the aftermath. We hold space for mercy, even when the world breaks." I watched as legions of angels took their places along the grid of earth, ready to comfort the dying, to inspire the living, to plant seeds of compassion in the cracks of catastrophe. And then I understood something terrifying and beautiful all at once. We think disasters are random, but in the spiritual realm, nothing is random. There are consequences to human greed, to apathy, to violence, but there's also grace, intervention, hope. As I stood there, watching the vision fade, the angel whispered one last truth into my mind. What happens next is not set in stone, but time is running out. After the vision faded, I found myself standing in a quieter part of the realm. The scrolls of time, the moving blueprints, they were still there in the distance, but now the air around me pulsed with a different kind of gravity. My guide led me forward, toward a circle of beings unlike any I had seen so far. They stood tall, not intimidating, but unmistakably powerful. Their eyes weren't fixed on the disasters or the maps. They were watching us, humanity. These were the watchers of humanity, beings assigned not to control us, but to witness. To oversee the choices we make as individuals and as a species. Their gaze wasn't judgmental, it was compassionate, but it carried the weight of responsibility. One of them stepped closer to me. His form shimmered like liquid light, yet his face was clear enough to see, eyes deep with sorrow and wisdom. Without moving his lips, he spoke directly into my mind. "We don't just observe," he said. "We document, we prepare, and sometimes we warn." I felt his words wrap around my soul. They weren't just for me, they were for all of us. He gestured to the scrolls behind him, the timelines of humanity. Some glowed softly with hope, others flickered, dark and brittle, like burnt paper on the edge of collapse. "Every action," he continued, "creates a ripple. Some ripples become storms, others become miracles. Our role is to witness both, and to intervene when mercy allows." I swallowed hard, though I no longer had a throat. "Why am I here?" I thought. His answer came immediately. "Because this vision is not meant to stay in the realm of angels," he said. "It's meant for the living, for those who still have time to change. You were chosen to carry back the warning, to speak what you've seen." The air vibrated softly around me, as if the entire realm acknowledged this assignment. And in that moment I realized, this wasn't just a near-death experience. It was a mission. Before I could respond, the scene shifted again. The watchers remained, but the space around me transformed. It wasn't like watching a movie, it was more like stepping inside my own life, every moment unfolding all at once, like an ocean of memories swirling around me. But this was different from any memory I'd ever recalled. These were the hidden layers, the things I never noticed while living. I saw myself as a child, pushing my little brother out of frustration, but instead of just seeing the shove, I felt his pain. Not just physical pain, but emotional, the sting of rejection, the seeds of insecurity planted in his heart that day. I saw myself walking past a homeless man outside a grocery store. I didn't even look at him. But now, from this place, I saw the moment ripple outward, how my indifference contributed to a silent wave of hopelessness that compounded his suffering. And then I saw the small acts of kindness I had forgotten, helping an elderly woman carry her groceries, holding a stranger's hand in a hospital waiting room, moments I barely remembered. Yet here, they glowed like beacons in the dark. I realized something I had never truly understood before. Every action matters, every choice echoes, even the thoughts I had kept hidden, my judgments, my jealousies, my fears, they had energy. They shaped the atmosphere around me, and affected the world in ways I could never have imagined. I felt my soul tremble with the weight of it, and yet, it wasn't all shame. There was grace too, a gentle awareness that this review wasn't meant to punish me, it was meant to wake me up. I understood then, my personal life and the world's future aren't separate stories, they're woven together. Every decision I make, every word I speak, every act of love or cruelty, it all feeds into the collective human experience. And now, I had been shown the threads, so that when I returned I could start weaving something better. After my personal review faded, my guide led me to a higher place, somewhere above the angelic control room, above the scrolls, above the maps. I looked down and saw Earth from a distance. It wasn't like the pictures you see from satellites. This wasn't just oceans and continents, it was something deeper, an emotional map, a spiritual blueprint of humanity's condition. I saw lights flickering across the planet, small acts of kindness, compassion, and love, parents sacrificing for their children, strangers helping strangers, quiet prayers whispered in the dark, but woven through the light were shadows, thick, heavy streaks of violence, greed and apathy, wars igniting, politicians lying, families torn apart by bitterness, people glued to screens, forgetting how to live, forgetting how to love. I saw both extremes playing out at once. One moment, a man handed his last meal to a hungry child. The next, another man loaded a weapon, driven by hate. It was as if humanity stood on a tightrope stretched between two destinies. Beneath it, a chasm of consequences. I turned to my guide, my heart heavy with what I saw. And then came the message, not with words, but as a knowing that filled my entire being. Earth teeters between grace and destruction every day. Humanity's next steps will determine the outcome. The disaster I had witnessed wasn't designed as punishment. It wasn't wrath. It was a consequence, the natural result of how far we've drifted from each other, from truth, from compassion. But it was also an invitation, a chance for awakening. I realized in that moment that the next global reckoning wouldn't just be about survival. It would be about how we respond when everything familiar is stripped away. Would we tear each other apart, or would we finally remember what matters? The world's future was not written in stone, but the window to change was closing. After the visions, my guide stood before me again. Their eyes, if you could call them eyes, held the depth of eternity, and yet they looked at me with gentleness, as if I were a fragile ember still burning in the cold. Now you must choose, they said without speaking. Will you stay here in peace, or will you return to the world below and carry the warning? The thought of staying was tempting. There was no pain here, no heartbreak, just love, just understanding, just rest. But then I saw their faces again. My mother, my brother, my best friend Sarah, the people I loved, the people still living in the middle of the storm, and I knew I couldn't leave them without this message. I turned to the angelic guide, my decision clear. I'll go back. My soul trembled, but my will held steady. The guide placed a hand, if you could call it a hand, over where my heart would be. If you return, they warned, you must speak boldly. Time is short. I nodded, knowing what that meant. No more small talk, no more sugarcoating the truth. When I returned, I would have to tell this story, no matter who believed me. And then it happened. A force like gravity, but deeper, began to pull me backward. The light dimmed, the sounds of the heavenly realm faded, and suddenly I was crashing through layers of existence, like falling through air and water at the same time. The next thing I felt was pain, real, raw, physical pain. My chest convulsed, my eyes shot open, machines beeped around me. A nurse gasped. A doctor shouted, "She's back. We've got her back." I tried to speak, but my throat was too dry. Tears blurred my vision, not from fear, but from knowing what had just happened. I was back in my body, but my soul, it would never be the same. Waking up in this world again felt strange. The air was heavier, the gravity stronger, everything had weight. My body, my breath, my heart beating inside my chest. It all felt like carrying stone after floating in eternity. But even so, the world felt precious. I noticed things I never noticed before, the warmth of sunlight on my skin, the way my mother's hand trembled when she touched mine in the hospital, the sound of my brother quietly weeping when he thought I was asleep. When I finally spoke, my voice was soft, but my words were urgent. I told them what I saw. Some listened with wide eyes and tears streaming down their faces. Some nodded politely, unsure if they believed me or just wanted to comfort me. Others looked away, afraid of what it might mean if I was telling the truth. My brother, always the skeptic, asked me the hardest question. So what are you going to do now? And I answered him honestly, live differently. I stopped wasting time on things that don't matter, petty arguments, gossip, proving I was right. I let go of grudges I'd been carrying for years. I started calling the people I loved just to tell them I loved them. No agenda, no expectations. I smiled at strangers. I forgave people who didn't ask for forgiveness. I said thank you more. I said I'm sorry faster. Because once you've seen the bigger picture, you realize how small our daily fights are, and how much time we waste forgetting what matters most. I came back knowing that life isn't just about getting through the day. It's about preparing for eternity, and choosing every single moment, what kind of imprint you're leaving on the world. If you've made it this far, you might be wondering if you believe me. Maybe you're thinking this sounds impossible. And honestly, I wouldn't blame you. But belief isn't the point. Consider this your warning. The The next disaster is already in motion, not because God is angry, not because the universe is cruel, but because we've lost our way. We're poisoning the planet, we're wounding each other, we're trading connection for convenience, love for control, purpose for distraction, and the angels I saw, they aren't preparing to destroy us. They're preparing to help us survive what's coming. But here's the hardest truth of all. It's up to us whether this breaks us or wakes us. We have a choice, right now, before the storm hits. You can forgive someone today. You can love deeper, even if it's uncomfortable. You can stop scrolling past real life and start being present in it. You can let go of the bitterness you've been nursing and trade it for grace. Because in the end, the smallest choices matter most. No one escapes death, but we all get to decide how we live until then. I don't tell you this to scare you. I tell you this because I saw the other side. And once you've seen it, you can't unsee it. I died. I saw what's coming. And now you've heard it too. What you do next is everything.